Hey there, fishionados. Kevin here from N.O.A.H, Northern Ontario Aquarium Hobby. I'd just like to welcome you to the first in our series that we're going to be calling
Foundations in Aquascaping.
I love that bumper. Sorry, folks. Anyways, Foundations in Aquascaping. Today we're going to start off with sort of the ground level up. Best place to start. So today we're going to be covering substrates. So the basic foundation for any planted tank. Now, before I get into it too deeply, I just want to start off by saying there's no bad substrates. You're going to see people on forums saying, oh, I hate this substrate, it's absolute garbage. I hate that substrate, it's absolute garbage. You have to use this, you have to use that. No. Again, like I've said in every video and will continue to say, it's what you want to achieve. It's using the materials to achieve the results that you're looking to achieve. That's probably the basis of it. Now, there's definitely going to be some people who are going to comment on this video right away.
Well, actually, if you use a substrate that has a higher carbonate hardness like coral, then you're going to run into issues by,
for those of you out there like that, stop being a jerk. You know what I mean. We're talking about planted substrates for a planted tank. Yes, there's going to be some that are just not suitable at all. However, within the realm of substrates that can be used for a planted tank, there's really no bad substrate. There's only good and best. Now again, a lot of this comes down to what you hope to achieve with your tank, what sort of growth, again, healthy growth versus optimal growth. But saying that one substrate is bad and that you can't grow in this, or one substrate is great and you have to use this, it's completely wrong. Again, it is subjective to what you would like to do. And I mean, I'm going to probably come back on that because there is some that is definitely better. There are some that you can say this is the best substrate available, but there's reasons for it. Now, again, there's a lot of variety in there about what you want to achieve, but essentially, we'll start off with the basics and work our way up to the best and the reasons why in between, okay? Now, one of the main dividing lines to think about when you're talking about substrates is inert substrates and buffering substrates. Simply, an inert substrate is a substrate that is not going to affect your water parameters in any sort of way. These are going to be your gravels, and in most cases your sands. I know there's some discussion about contents of silicates affecting diatom growth and everything, but that's not what we're talking about. We're really talking about how this affects your pH, GH, KH, basically. But an inert substrate is something that really has little or no impact on your water parameters. A buffering substrate, on the other hand, is something that will lower your pH, and then your GH and KH, your general hardness and carbonate hardness, come into play a little bit in that as well. But so that's a nice place to sort of divide things between inert substrates and buffering substrates. Now, another term that I'm going to be using a lot in this video that it's probably better that we get a definition out of the way is CEC, which is cation exchange capacity. Now, essentially, cation exchange capacity is the ability for a substrate to hold nutrients. To be a little bit more technical, the CEC or cation exchange capacity usually refers to the porous surface area of a granule or a particle of the substrate that attracts positively charged ions, potassium, ammoniums, and that sort of thing, which allow it to be stored and then allow for better nutrient access and uptake by the plants. This is now in exclusion of fertilizer dosing in the water column or root tab. Something with a high CEC has a high capacity to hold on to nutrients and release them for plant uptake. Something with a low CEC has a low capacity to hold on to nutrients and release them for plant uptake. Now we'll start off with a basic aquarium gravel. You know, that's you can either get the fancy colored stuff, or you know, something that looks a little bit more natural. A lot of people who first get into the hobby, or maybe you're just fish keepers, that's typically where they may start out. You know, you've got your basic aquarium rocks, essentially. Now, some people say, oh yeah, you're only going to be able to grow certain plants in there, very little and everything like that. Again, not necessarily true. You can grow a lot of things in aquarium gravel. Even some of the higher end plants can be grown in it. It's just definitely not optimal. The main reason, again, that it's not optimal, one, grain size. I mean, the aquarium rocks are usually a little bit larger, and so they're harder for some of these stem plants to actually take hold and into plant in, or some of the plants that put out runners maybe to sort of find its way through without sort of getting deformed and having to twist it around. The other reason is that it has almost no CEC. It's completely inert and closed off, and it doesn't have the capacity to absorb nutrients that you're dosing into the system. So you can plant in aquarium gravel by adding root tab fertilizers in it and by water dosing, but essentially that's going to be the main source of nutrients that are going to get to your plants. Of course, there's going to be detritus and mulm that breaks down fish waste, plant waste, that will create a natural fertilizer for your tank as well. But as far as the substrate itself being useful for holding on to those nutrients, it's almost nil. So really what's happening is any of the sources of fertilization are only available through either the root tabs, the decomposition, or the water column fertilizer dosing that you're going to add. Now, in one of those tanks, there are a few different steps that you can use to plant well and to have a good growing tank, using something that's rhizome based, say like a Java fern, that you attach to a rock or you attach to a piece of driftwood, so it's not necessarily a soil dwelling plant. Those will do particularly well, but again, you're not really using the substrate per se as the growing medium. As well with that, there is Wabikusa style planting that you can do, but that's sort of cheating around because then you're providing a different growing medium base. I'm going to be having a video coming up on how to do a planted Wabikusa rather than an immersed Wabikusa, so I won't get too deep into that right now. Now, the next most common substrates that people may use, again moving up from gravel, is going into the sands, either commercially bought aquarium sands, pool filter sands, sandblasting, black sandblasting sand. Now again, for the most part, these are completely inert and have zero CEC. So again, they do not have the capacity to hold on to nutrients. So again, likewise with the gravel, you're going to be getting all of your fertilization strictly from water column dosing, root tabs, and decomposition. Again, this doesn't mean you can't grow in it. There's plenty of stuff that I've grown and that other people have grown using just sand. It is nicer for planting in, obviously, than gravel because it's smaller particles, and so it can sort of hold on to the stems better. It's also allows for a little bit more root development for some of your carpeting plants or your runner plants, and can spread out. It is decoratively really nice. Now, one of the issues that you can run into is you can't plant particularly deep with just sand, because it does have the habit to compact. Now, soil compaction will lead to anaerobic pockets. Anaerobic pockets essentially releasing nasty gases that can kill off your plants and your fish. Again, I'll get into that a little bit more in another video, but at least understand soil compaction creates issues. So sand, you can't necessarily plant deep unless you plan on disturbing that substrate often to avoid those anaerobic bacteria pockets. Now, the next set of substrates, typically moving up in the levels that people go to, you're going to see your laterites or your some of your lava-based or hard-baked clay substrates. Again, similar to laterite, fluvals or seachems, fluorite, Eco-Complete. Now, those are all again, larger granule usually, and much harder substrate, more comparable at least in size to an aquarium gravel. However, these are usually very porous substances, and so again, they have a much higher CEC capacity than sand or aquarium gravel. So that means they do have the ability to attract those positive ions and to hold on to some of those nutrients in the column. Now, in a lot of cases, they are more mineral-based in their composition than they are nutrient-based in terms of organic available nutrients. Now, there's some argument and discussion about, okay, something like Eco-Complete, if it's baked too hard, does that mean that those minerals aren't readily available? I'm not going to get too much into that argument. Some people say yes, some people say no. But what is important to understand is, if nothing else, they have a nice high CEC to them, so they are able to hold on to those nutrients, and that's a big benefit. So now, when you're dosing in your water column and you're receiving nutrients from decomposition and root tabs, all of a sudden that substrate can hold on to those nutrients much better and release it for the uptake to your plants. Now, some of those sort of more just sort of clay-baked or lava style, like fluorite or Eco-Complete, some of them do have an organic compound in them that allows for some nutrient rather than just mineral retention within it and release. Again, because they are baked so hard, it's not as readily available as with some of the other less hardened substrates that I'll be discussing later on. One of the benefits, however, for that type of substrate is that it lasts not forever, but virtually forever. They take a big beating, they stick around for a long time. Another reason that they are quite good is that you can usually bank your substrates quite deep with something like that. Because of the shape and size of it, it allows for a deeper water circulation to move through and lower root development as well, so that avoids the chance of anaerobic bacteria. Now, because anaerobic bacteria develops in soil compaction, again, it's less likely to. I'm not saying it won't, but it's less likely to. And so coming into layering some of your substrates to raise the benefit of having less compaction is possible. And again, I can talk about that a little bit more, perhaps in another video coming up about lava rock. Now, another type of substrate that I'll put sort of in that middle range that a lot of people use is organic potting soil. You'll hear people talk about a dirted tank. Essentially, what they're talking about is using an organic potting soil that has, no fertilizers added to it, so it's just pure organic soil. With those sort of soils, you usually cap them. Now, some people cap them with sand, some people cap them with gravel. Capping just means you're not allowing that soil to, because it's usually so light, even when it becomes waterlogged, to float up and cloud your water. So putting the cap on it allows it to stay more in place and to be a little bit more controllable. Now, as I said, people will use inert caps. Some people will use something that's high CEC or a higher grade, like the ADA Aquasoil, as the cap on top of that, because then you've got a combination of a really high quality, commercially available soil with a natural soil base, and those high quality commercially available soils can be quite expensive, so it's sometimes to mitigate the cost by having your soil, organic potting soil underneath a higher grade of capping soil. Now, one of the issues again that can arise with organic soil is that it is definitely prone to compaction over time. So again, unless you've got stem plants that have a really nice deep root development to sort of break up that compaction, or you're doing deep cleaning into your substrate, which in a planted tank is relatively hard, or sort of poking at it to release gas. Again, mixing your organic soils with something that will break it up and allow for a little bit of flow, like mixing some sand or some aquarium gravel or some lava rock in there to sort of add a little bit more substance to it and not allow deep compacted areas. Now, in terms of bioavailable nutrients that are in soils, typically organic soils are high in nutrients, lower in minerals, whereas something like a clay-based is higher in minerals, less in nutrients. So that's why in the next step, when we're talking about sort of the combination of the two, you'll see why those really are better substrates to be using. But gets a little bit trickier talking about CEC when you're discussing organic soil, organic potting soil substrates, because it depends on their composition. If your organic soil has a higher clay composition, it will have, or a higher peat composition, it will have a higher CEC. If it's more of just a basic soil with a little bit of biomatter in terms of decayed leaves, compost, tree matter, and other plant matter and stuff like that, without as much clay, then it's going to have a much lower CEC. And so again, it's really hard to say how that's going to benefit your tank in terms of its ability to absorb those nutrients that you're providing through root tab fertilization, decomposition, and water column fertilizer dosing. But organic soil in and of itself is naturally more nutrient rich, and so you're starting off with a higher level of available nutrients right in your soil, so that is definitely a plus when it comes to growing your plants. Now, those, as the materials decompose over time, those nutrients obviously burn out and start to diminish. They're being, supplemented a little bit by the natural decay in your tank. However, not enough really to bring it back up to the levels they were, and so again, that's why the root tabs are in there. So when looking at your organic potting soils, if it doesn't have the clay or peat or something that has a high CEC additive to that organic soil, it's not going to be as effective in the long term as something that has a high CEC in terms of holding on to nutrients that you're dosing into the water column. And essentially, at some point, it starts to become almost about as valuable as a basic inert substrate. There's a lot of shifts in there. It's a big gray area, so I don't want to say, over time organic soil becomes completely useless, because when you're doing, say, a Wallstead tank, where it's mainly organic soil, because it's such a low-tech system, there's not as much optimal plant growth, and so that means the plants aren't burning through the nutrients available as quickly, and so the bioavailable nutrients through plant decomposition and fish waste is more readily available, and it raises higher and faster because you've got slow, healthy plant growth instead of a CO2 injected sort of system where you've got a fast plant growth that's using up a lot of those nutrients. Now, the next level, and probably I would have to say the highest level in talking about substrates, is something when you get into fluval stratum, or ADA Aquasoil. Now, the reason that these are the premium substrates and probably the best substrates to be able to use in a planted tank situation is because they are a combination of organic soils and clays. Most of them come from tropical regions, so the soil is already nutrient rich from volcanic activities and the rain cycles and the lot, and so they're just a much more nutrient rich soil to begin with. And so it's a combination, like I said, of using a pure organic soil that's already high in nutrient qualities, and then they're mixed with a clay that's a baked clay. So again, that clay has that higher surface area and the higher CEC. So what you're getting is really the best of both worlds. You're getting a substrate that has that ability to absorb the nutrients and hold on to them to make them more readily available for plant uptake, as well as the original bioavailable nutrients that come with the organic soil. Because they're not as hard baked as, say, something like an Eco-Complete or a fluorite, they can start break down sooner over time. Now we're talking a good number of years before it starts to sort of turn into a mud situation at the bottom, where it's really reverting more back to just the feel of an organic soil. Now, that does lower this, when it does that breakdown, it does lower that CEC a little bit, but not much, because most of that clay is still in there, and it still has the particulates that are allowing the bonding of those nutrients that you're adding through your root tabbing, the decomposition, and the plant. And the water column fertilization. But again, you're still going, because of the available nutrients and minerals in the ADA soil, the high CEC, the ability for it to hold on to and then release those nutrients to your plants through the uptake. ADA really is one of the perfect substrates. There are a number of other substrates out there by other companies that sort of seek to replicate ADA, and some of them do it quite well. However, ADA Aquasoil, or ADA type Aquasoils, I'll say, are going to be the best. Just ADA is obviously the most well known of the brands, and probably the more readily available. It is expensive, but in the long run it's going to pay off. Whether you're looking for, as I've said before, healthy plant growth or optimal plant growth, it's really going to cover both of your bases. Now, I'm not saying that someone doing a low-tech tank really needs to run out and get ADA or anything like that. Absolutely not. You work within your budget, and again, you work with what you would like to achieve in your tank to get the results that you're looking for. But you are definitely going to see the benefits of using a higher quality substrate that has a high CEC and has a high original nutrient dosing. Now, over time, as I said, that nutrient dosing that is locked in to that substrate just by its very nature of being organic, that will eventually decompose and wear out over time. So this is again where the need for that high CEC quality comes in, because then all the other fertilizer that you're dosing can, grab hold and essentially sort of replenish your substrate. It's not replenishing it up to the point where it's going to be obviously as just naturally bioavailable as before, but it does allow the substrate to continue to release the nutrients for plant uptake. Now, as I just said, and as I always say, decide what you want to accomplish with your tank. Decide how much money and how much time investment you want to put in, because obviously the higher quality substrates are going to definitely allow for faster growth, which does in turn usually mean more maintenance. So if you're not looking for something that you have to spend a lot of money on right now, and you're not looking to do a lot of maintenance in terms of time commitment, consider whether or not you want to use those higher quality substrates. You can, as I said, use some of the fully inert gravels, aquarium gravels and sands. Ultimately, you may end up spending a little bit more in some of the fertilizers. However, usually when people are doing a low-tech tank, they're not necessarily doing an EI dosing and a lot of heavy dry fertilizer overdosing, as those methods suggest. You're usually using something like Flourish or Thrive, you know, or an Osmocote Plus root tab, or something like that. And so you're not on as strict or as heavy of a dosing regime, so it's still going to last a little bit over time. So again, it's finding the balance for how much growth and maintenance you want and how much money you want to spend. But when it comes down to the best way to look at it, really, inert substrates such as sand and gravel have low CEC, and so they're less beneficial for the growth of your plants. Inert sands, blasting sands, aquarium sands, again, have low CEC and are less beneficial in the long run to providing those nutrients for your tank. Again, both of those things can easily be supplemented with water column dosing and root tabs. Something like the baked clay or lava substrates like a fluorite or an Eco-Complete do have some bioavailable nutrients in them, but mainly they're minerals that maybe are locked in, maybe aren't, but they do have a nice high CEC to them, so that definitely allows them to hold on to the nutrients that you're dosing through the water column or for root tabs. So again, you're going to see a little bit more closer to an optimal growth situation without having to really add quite as much fertilizer necessarily as you'll find in a full inert substrate. Something like something like fluval stratum or ADA Aquasoil really are the best of both worlds. Clay content that has a high CEC, so it's definitely making use of the fertilizers that you're adding into your tank, as well as they have a higher concentration of bioavailable nutrients right off the bat. And so it's really, they're the perfect balance. Make your choice, do your research and see, but again, there's no substrate that someone can point to and say, that's junk, don't use it. And as unpopular as an opinion as this may be, if you're seeing people on the forums who are coming out and saying, oh, Eco-Complete is absolute garbage, you know, it wouldn't grow anything for me, I always like to say, don't blame the hammer, blame the carpenter. Because unless we're talking about actual hardware failure, you know, where your filters break down, then you can say this is a piece of junk because, you know, it was built wrong. When it comes to talking about substrates and everything like that, if someone isn't able to grow at least healthy growth in any sort of substrate, the problem is with the grower, not with the substrate. Yes, again, it comes down to what do you want to achieve. If someone is really looking for that explosive optimal growth and everything, they're going to have much better results with a CO2 injected, EI dosing, high grade substrate like ADA Aquasoil, absolutely. But if you cannot grow plants in less than optimal conditions, again, unpopular opinion, but I like to say that means you can't grow plants, or you're not very skilled at growing plants, and you're relying on the technology to do it for you. So if you get a start in the planted tank hobby, and you start off working with some of the less than optimal conditions, and you're able to achieve success in terms of healthy growth, once you start moving up the scale in terms of quality substrates and quality equipment, you're going to have a much easier time working with those because you're not relying strictly on the technology. You're relying on your skill and your experience and using the technology to make it easier or as a bit of a benefit. If someone entered into the planted tank hobby and went straight for the high tech, and that's all that they can grow under, but you give them less than optimal conditions and they fail time and time again, don't blame the hammer, blame the carpenter. Well, that's it for this video. I hope that I was able to at least break it down into parts that you can understand. There's more science involved in some of it, and I was at least trying to give people a general idea. But please do hit subscribe down there. Stay up to date with any of the newest videos that are coming out. As I said in my last video, coming the new year, there's some really cool projects coming up and builds, some great developments. There's going to be more additions to the Foundations in Aquascaping series, as well as other videos. So please do punch that subscribe down there. Comment, share, like, spread it around, because the more people we get involved in this, the more discussion we have, the more chances I have of being able to do some giveaways. I really want to be able to do some, but I need to sort of get that subscription rate up a little bit higher, just so I've got more opportunity to give more things away. But so please do hit subscribe, like the channel, have fun with your tanks, take all the things into consideration, figure out what you want to do, dive right in.